Hey everyone, hope you guys are doing well. This is my Game Week 11 transfer plans video right after Game Week 10 finish and right after the return of Erling Haaland, proverbially in FPL. A lot of people decided to go away from him in the last few weeks, and I think honestly the only people who really benefited were people who did a Game Week 8 wild card, because if you, for example, did the transfers this week, it obviously would have been probably quite bad, unfortunately. As it turns out, of course, I kept Haaland from Game Week 8 wildcard, and finally we're getting a little bit of a nicer swing back towards us. And next week, hopefully, of course, is going to be a good Haaland captaincy versus Bournemouth at home. We'll see, obviously, how that turns out. But right now, I'm just showing you my live rank on Fantasy Football Hub. You can obviously check the link in the description for this website, but I am currently at 26,000 in the world, so a position that I do quite enjoy. And yeah, we'll move on towards my team this week. As far as my team, I got 76 points, not 69. Of course, Haaland's bonus points are yet to come in, and ultimately Diaby's as well, right? So we got those 6 bonus points from those players, and I think also 1 bonus point from... Oh, and sorry, of course, the Colwell points off the bench. So that's the situation that I'm in. And I'm quite happy, of course. The week, as it turned out, transfer-wise, was good because Trippier did bad, Richarlison did bad. So actually the transfers were okay because I got a Saka assist and I got Colwell off the bench. I obviously went into Gabriel and that didn't turn out well. I have huge regrets, obviously, of going for Tsimikas because Tsimikas ended up with a clean sheet. That was a 5-point loss, and obviously you don't want to take those week to week on FPL. I am actually looking forward to getting Tsimikas in the future, and I'll talk about that in terms of my transfer plans for next week. As far as just reviewing this week and sort of touching on my players, my assets, what do I think about them? Son, obviously, I think it was nice to actually keep him over Trippier, so I was quite happy about that decision. We've, of course, mentioned that Trippier is someone that we can definitely revisit around Game Week 17 when Newcastle have better fixtures. But the reality, as we said, the good fixtures were away from home, where you can see, obviously, within West Ham and Wolves now, they've struggled to keep those clean sheets. And they can't keep clean sheets every game. It's just, it's really impossible. It's such a tough league. They are facing multiple competitions, and they are hamstrung by injuries. The Murphy injury, defensive injuries like Botman means that they are on effectively very, very little legs. And they also have to play within the EFL Cup because they beat City the last time round. And that actually means that they also have to play midweek, which is obviously going to be a huge impact on the fitness of all the Newcastle players. Now, as far as my team, Porro obviously doesn't feel fantastic to own, but he's going to be facing Chelsea next week. Chelsea do look like still a very timid team when it comes to finishing. So quite interested to actually go Porro next week. We know that this Tottenham team will attack, so excited to see what he'll do. He's someone that I have to play. Gabriel, I simply cannot play. I don't want to play him versus Newcastle. I do think Newcastle will probably score. They're still a very, very strong attacking team. No doubts about that. We saw that versus Wolves as well with Wilson's clinical finishing. But they were a bit poor in that game from the attacking point of view, if you want to say that. I just don't have the confidence necessary that Arsenal away from home will actually get that clean sheet versus Newcastle. And worst case scenario, if let's say I have auto subs, I will play Gabriel. But if I was to pick between, let's say, Gabriel and Gordon next week, I'm definitely going to be playing Gordon. I just prefer playing the attackers in such a scenario. As far as, let's say, Diaby, he feels like an easy hold now because his minutes aren't perfect, but still he bagged 89 versus Luton, and I still think he's going to be a permanent starter. The poor minutes really come down to the fact that he was injured in that Wolves fixture. Otherwise, it's been pretty good, other than, let's say, game weeks 2 and 3, where, of course, he was easing into the team and then also facing competition in terms of the playoffs that Aston Villa were actually playing their first string side for. And now you're seeing Zaniolo being more of a substitute for Bailey, so not so concerned about, let's say, Bailey's impact. And, of course, Bailey has been good lately, but Diaby has been great as well in the Luton fixture. And you're still looking, of course, in the fixture, going ahead, Nottingham Forest, Fulham, these two fixtures, I'll probably keep him. And actually, on Game Week 13, I can then revisit going for Mbumo, who obviously just cannot stop hauling like mad since I've sold him on Game Week 8 wildcard. But nice, of course, that Diaby at least matched him this week. So when I look at my team going forwards, I think Son is quite a long-term hold. Saka's a long-term hold. Salah's a long-term hold. Gordon, probably a reluctant hold, but, you know, after the Arsenal game, it's not like the fixtures from an attacking point of view are too bad per se, right? You got Bournemouth, Chelsea, who aren't particularly good. I mean, United, who frankly are awful. And Everton actually a very tough fixture, I would say. As I said, when even looking at, for example, Bowen's fixtures and talking about Bowen on the cheat sheet, I thought Everton were going to be a tough match for them, simply because I think West Ham actually are one of those sort of bottom half teams, unfortunately, right now on form, and also just in terms of what they've presented so far on the underlying stats as a team. As far as Watkins and Haaland, still probably going to hold them, although it feels nice. I think if you're someone who's, let's say, looking at, let's say, Alvarez and Watkins and constantly choosing between the two, you can now consider obviously going for Watkins towards Alvarez if you really don't have any transfers to make. I do think that's a good move because Alvarez's minutes for me are still secure. The question, of course, is whether you want to even move into someone like Darwin potentially, who could get good minutes. Unfortunately, there also was a Luis Diaz situation. Of course, I hope the absolute best for him and his family and everyone involved in that situation because, of course, very, very dire news. But that also has nice impacts in terms of, let's say, the minutes of Liverpool forwards as well, if you want to put it that way. I don't want to see it as such, but we'll see what happens there, of course, and see how that situation develops. But Darwin could be also a very good transfer if you really want to go off of Watkins. But for me, I think between Watkins, Alvarez, and even Darwin, these are all picks that you can actually keep for the long term. I wouldn't necessarily be rushing to move towards Darwin unless you are in a 3-4-3 structure. So those are my thoughts in terms of the forwards. As far as defenses, as I said, I think Tsimikas is a great pick. I think he will be the one to sort of own for me going forwards. And when I look at, let's say, my transfers next week, ultimately, it's a case of me clearly lacking a third defender. So that's why Lamptey to Tsimikas is actually a potential move that I can make because right now this Brighton team is struggling a lot in terms of defense. I guess even if Lamptey can come onto the field, and even though we know he's going to be an attacking fullback, what sort of value is he going to bring to me? If you look at someone like March, who was playing left back at times as well, I mean, it's still tough to get returns from those positions. So I do think if I can actually squeeze 0.6 in the bank, move that towards Tsimikas, I think I've got a lovely team for next week because I can be fielding the exact same team. All the Aston Villa players, even though they're away from home. Saka, of course, just because he's a great pick no matter what. Salah and Haaland, of course, Son and Porro, who have home fixtures at the very bare minimum, and Areola still going to be a tough one between, let's say, Areola and Turner, but I think Turner might actually lose his position. He was awful in the Liverpool game, and arguably, look, I mean, Aston Villa is a better attacking team than Brentford, just about, but there is obviously away and home, but yeah, I might just go with Areola there because I think he's going to be the permanent keeper and it's going to be close between the two of them. And then in terms of Archer, he'll probably actually, sit in front of Colwill per se, but that's it for my team, right? I don't really want to be playing Colwill. I don't really want to be playing Archer. Archer obviously lacking in minutes. I do think he'll start again next week, but we have to sort of assess that situation going forwards, see if there's any news in terms of Brewster getting more starts over Archer. But yeah, I think so. If I can just make the move, something as simple as Lamptey to Tsimikas, that's probably the best position that I can actually be in. Because, of course, it's tough to see my team in 0.0 in the bank. But I think, for example, in the future, if I'm making moves away from a defender position, Porro can always be used and sort of extinguished as such. If I can't go Tsimikas, I suppose I could go Maguire. But do I really want to be investing in this United defense? They've put some awful performances, if you even have to compare, let's say, versus Sheffield United. Sheffield United, before the Arsenal fixture, had 7.5 xG in 9 games. After the Arsenal fixture, I believe it was still 7.5 xG. And if you're looking at that in context, 1.4 of that was versus United. So United, a very, very weak team, bottom half defense. I don't really know if I want to invest in that. And who knows how long Maguire can keep his spot in the team, despite some recent good performances and some nice comments from Ten Hag. So there's that. And also when I think about, let's say, my cash cows in each position, it's Watkins, it's Son, and it's Porro. And I'm very comfortable moving down from all of these picks to anyone who's a green asset, for example, in the cheat sheet going forward. So I do like the fact that I continue to own Son. I won't be going to Trippier anytime soon, but I can always move away from Porro because there's no target asset that I really want who's actually more expensive than Porro, other than maybe Saliba, arguably. So I can't really address the Gabriel situation just yet, but I do think it's worth keeping him in the team, seeing what happens with the Kirior situation. I don't have an exit plan, of course, towards, let's say, Zinchenko in the future. But even, for example, when I talk about Mbumo and Diaby, there's always going to be the money in the bank that I actually have from Diaby to go into Mbumo as soon as Game Week 13 because of Mbumo's price drop. So I don't think I'm too concerned there. And who knows, I can always go, let's say, 2 transfers, one defender into a 3.9 player or 3.8 player because Baldock is now 3.8, and then always upgrade elsewhere as well if I think Gabriel's an awful pick. So that could be one of the suggestions that I go with. Even Archer or Turner, these players can now be reduced. I think if you're wildcarding and you haven't wildcarded on Game Week 8 or 10, you could be looking at assets like Turner, like Baldock, and like Mubama. Just save as much money as possible because you probably would have lost a lot of transfer value, and this is what you need to do. Nice, of course, in terms of the landscape of FPL that Adingra and Matoma had good minutes. That's something we expected. Keep in mind that Roberto De Zerbi actually mentioned that Ansu Fati and João Pedro are in his first choice 11, but because they actually have to compete in Europe, they're starting to play their first choice 11 in the Europa League, and actually now they're struggling when they're facing, for example, their Premier League opposition, getting a draw versus Fulham today. So it's going to be a tough situation going forwards. And we know that he can still call upon players like Lallana and like Ferguson, who scored today. So it's a tough situation there. But I still think that those are nice picks going forward. In terms of Nketiah, obviously a player who did incredibly well this week, and a lot of people will probably be reacting to. He's still got Newcastle, so we can always just deliberate on what to do with Nketiah. And of course, just monitor Jesus' injury situation on Game Week 12, where we can actually maybe revisit Nketiah. And also congratulations and shout out to FPL Praz as well for getting Nketiah. Awesome pick. I believe Rich Clark as well also made that transfer. So congratulations to them for getting an awesome hat trick that I thought even could be a poker if he got the penalty. But yeah, so that's sort of my team landscape. I'm the type of manager who actually really likes bench depth. And you can see, obviously, it didn't work out with Colwell today because he was awful. But going forwards, you always want to have depth because some players will always lose out. Some players will get injured. Some players will unfortunately have bad fixtures where you would prefer rotating, right, in the future. If you've got rotation pairs, defender pairs, keeper pairs, maybe not so much, but you get the point. And that's sort of what I have in mind going forward. So next week, if I was the captain, just early talking about that, Captain Haaland for sure. And then vice captain Salah. I don't think it's really close between anyone else. You could argue that Son obviously has continued to be extremely consistent, but am I confident in going for Son as a captain? No, just because Haaland just has a supreme fixture. And I'm not convinced that Bournemouth have suddenly turned the corner because they've gotten their first win of the season versus one of the other awful teams in this league in terms of Burnley. Unfortunately, I have to say that. And that's just the reality. So that's going to be my team next week. We'll see what happens with Archer and Gordon. Maybe we'll also have to see whether Gordon's minutes are managed in the EFL Cup. That would be ideal, of course, if that they don't have to play Gordon there. And we can even maybe monitor, for example, the Lamptey situation. But as I said, I think he'll be for Tsimikas. And once I transfer Tsimikas into the team, Gabriel will also fall deep into the bench. And I'll probably actually choose between Gabriel and Colwell, who's on the back of my bench. But that's it for me this week. And thank you guys so much for watching. And hopefully we can keep these green arrows going. I hope you guys all had wonderful weeks yourselves. Hope the transfer advice did work out. And take care. And I'll see you guys in the next video.